are you so much bigger than me? That's not fair. I'm just kidding.
Heard that before?
All
I've never
right.
heard that before. Actually, that's a lie. That's never ever been said.
How are you?
Shut up. Happy Christmas. I hope it was wonderful.
It was. All right. Do we want to tell Jay the real reason that he's actually here? We're
Oh
actually
no.
auctioning you off for an all-inclusive paid vacation date for a weekend.
Where are we going?
It's up to the person who bids the most, so
It's an Paul said it's an intervention.
it's an intervention. All right. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Ash. Ashley, you can call me Ash, and I am an intersectional feminist, and I mostly do lives in the morning around feminist topics, not too much on politics. And recently, we've been talking a lot about just ideologies and deconstructing from them, how people get sucked in. And so this kind of fell in, I think, well with what we've been talking about. Hold on one second, because can you guys hear
Isn't
me?
there like a blur option on TikTok?
That's why I have a for your background.
Yeah, do they have that?
Yeah, you have to go into your, are you on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
no.
All right. Well, I'm just going to be big and in everybody's face.
Heard that before. Okay.
Grow up.
All right. So we're here, naming the system, not excusing the harm, high demand beliefs, and exit paths. And so I'm just gonna, I wrote a couple things down. I'm honestly just gonna read a couple things, and then Jay will be doing most of the talking. I'm just gonna kind of like interview him and let him answer the questions. So the first thing that I want to say, and I know we talk a lot about this, is that there's a lot of things happening right now and a lot of harm happening to people through policy, through words, actions. And so by no means is this any type of, we're not trying, or at least I'm not trying to convince anybody to go out of their comfort zone or have any responsibility in trying to grasp a hold of what the fuck is happening with MAGA and people who just can't seem to face the truth, or who are so sucked in. It's something that we have a hard time understanding. And so this conversation today is not about tolerating racism, bigotry, or dehumanizing of any kind. Understanding how people get pulled into high demand religion or MAGA is not the same as excusing the harm these systems or individuals cause. There's no obligation to agree, engage, or to use these tools. The work of reaching people depends on both the giver and the receiver, wink, wink, of the information. And choosing not to engage with someone who has harmed you is always okay. And so I chose the name, naming the systems, not excusing the harm, high demand beliefs, and exit paths. And so today we're going to talk about high demand belief systems. Not to try to make sense of them. The advice that I've learned is that you can't make sense of nonsensical things. And when you spend too much time giving people try to make these excuses or tell you why, you end up kind of giving them the platform. But I think a lot of us probably love somebody who's stuck, or maybe you're stuck, or maybe you have a job where you come in contact with lots of people and you have these opportunities and you don't know what to say, how to say, or if it's even your place. And so I think the core thing that I kind of wanted to start with is, we often say, like, why don't they leave? It's just easy to leave, right? Just if it doesn't make sense and if you can see the harm, why wouldn't you leave? So I think that there's two things that I seem to see when, and from my own personal experience, is that you have to want to be able to hear the truth and see the truth instead of excusing it. And then you need a place to go to talk about those things that's not your affirmation camp, because they're just going to tell you it's bullshit. So you have to have a place where you can go and have these questions. So with that being said, can somebody pull themselves out and see the truth? 100% by themselves. If not, then some of us end up stepping in. But I think it's fair to discuss what that looks like and who should do it, how much work is okay, and to borrow language from my Christian indoctrination, sometimes you have to plant a seed, and sometimes you watch it grow. Sometimes you have to water it, and sometimes you have to walk away and let other factors do their job. And so it's not ever solely one person's job, but I think collectively, if we can talk about this and find our places, I do think that we can make change. So I brought Jay here, not really to like tell us. He often says he's not pushing for one side. He wants to give the information. He wants people to think critically. And I think that is the most important thing, is if people can learn to trust themselves, think critically, they typically will want to seek out that truth. So Jay, do you want to start off and tell us what we kind of talked about when we talk about high demand systems, like what that means, what they are, what are some of their core features and the patterns, just so people kind of understand where we're starting off with.
Sure. A lot of times when people talk about like cults, they'll frame it as a high demand religion. And I think if I had to guess, I think it's because it can apply to like a broad group of people. So this could be like for somebody who's in an MLM. This could be for somebody who takes football too seriously. It could be for somebody who is in, I don't know, there's got to be some sort of like astrology cult. But the idea behind it is that it is a high demand, that you have, they'll all say the same things too. It's all the same buzzwords. It's get skin in the game, give somebody a structure that they don't want to leave. I remember Felice talking about like working at, I don't remember what tech company she worked at. I don't even know if she ever told us what tech company she worked at, but she talked about how they would create like a culture inside of the company. They would give everybody a gym. You had lunch. Everything became housed in that job, and that job became your actual like ecosystem that lived in. So the main, like when you're talking about a high demand religion or group, you're looking, it's kind of like similar to fascism a little bit. I think that's why people struggle when you say that they're fascist, but they're already in a high demand religion, because there's going to be like like a leadership structure. And inside that leadership structure, there's usually like a focal person, a celebrity or a face to it. And then there's just like a big power structure between the leaders and then the rank and file. And so any of these structures we're looking at are going to be like, they're all a little bit different, but the main thing you want to see is like, is there a structure? Is there like effectively a class system? Does the person at the top receive the same type of criticism and like interest, I guess, inspection of their life? And usually they don't. Usually the person at the top is viewed as like this heroic figure who everybody aspires to be like.
Okay. I'm assuming the goal of that is because they don't want people to start searching out on their own. And they want the clarity to come from, they want everybody to have the same clarity.
I think oftentimes it's more simple than that. I think oftentimes it's just people like, whether they like to admit it or not, people like being directed. And if the direction is coming from somebody that they can trust, somebody who they have similar principles to, or they think they have similar principles to, it makes it a lot easier. I think oftentimes it comes down to like people not wanting to critically think. People like answers handed to them. People don't like to do the work, which makes sense. I hate doing work for anything that I don't like to do. So that makes perfect sense. Yeah. If you're gonna have a belief system, you might as well have somebody that can like deliver it to you.
Okay. So we are going to get into sort of defining like the structure and all the mechanisms that work inside these, where they overlap, where we see them, like from religions to MAGA, red pill, all of those things. But first, just can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you were raised, what your young adult life was like, and then how you would describe yourself today to somebody?
There's a lot of dry humping. There was a lot of dry humping. So I was adopted at birth. All the kids in my family that I was raised in were all adopted at birth. All of them done through the Mormon church. My parents were extremely Mormon. like all the heritage from my family that I was raised in, they're all pioneer, they'd say like pioneer ancestry. So these are all like mostly illegal immigrants that came over from Europe. They were proselytized. They came to America with this idea that they would have a promised land that was supposed to be Illinois, then it was supposed to be Missouri, and eventually it became Utah or Zion. And so most of my ancestors were from there. My mom's side of the family, they all stayed like in Salt Lake, and my dad's side of the family, they were more like hillbilly, and they got sent down to like southeastern Utah, where you could practice polygamy more freely and you could be farmers. So I was raised Mormon. That for us, that means like you have church every Sunday, which used to be 3 hours. I think Mormons go for 2 hours now, but you had like a 1 hour meeting where people would speak, then you would break out and you would go, like the kids would go somewhere, everybody below 18 would go like to different classes. The adults were split up between the priesthood and what was called the Relief Society. That was the women's group. And then you would come together for one last hour, the adults and the kids, for like Sunday school. And then weekly, you had one night every week, like youth night, where you would go to the church and you do activities. It was like, it was interlaced with scouting for the boys. So like every Tuesday night I would go and I'd have scouts and we work on merit badges, or what did we have? It was called like a Duty to God award, where you'd have like these checklists and they would literally give you awards in church growing up. Like you would get a medal. I don't think I got the Duty to God award. I think you had to study too much. But there were like these little like achievement programs as you went through. And so like from the time you're 8 years old, really, I mean, from the time you're born, but from the time you're 8 until you get married, if you're a woman, or you go on a mission, if you're a man, there's like all these milestones that you have to hit. And each milestone comes like 8 years old, you're baptized. 12 years old, if you're a boy, you get the priesthood, but you only get like this lesser priesthood where you can like pass out the sacrament and you can take donations. And then
So
once you're
they're
16, you can be a,
Are they
oh yeah,
gendered?
yeah, yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no women in the clergy for Mormons. And you just work your way up. And the whole idea, and they teach you from the time you're a kid, that your plan should be whatever your vocation is. Like your plan should be follow the prophet the whole way through. You sing songs, you learn,
Okay,
like you
wait.
chant.
We're gonna
Follow.
get there.
Okay.
Wait. Pause. Because you're answering a question I want to get into, and that's actually. But we would talk about identity, and because that's an important part. I want to talk about the structure first, and so.
Okay.
When we talk about okay, you were starting to talk about the identity, but back up. How do they use that? I would imagine they have to gain that trust first before they start to tell you who you are, right? So from an early age, how do they get you to sort of tie your identity like to? Is it a belief first and then your identity, or is your identity set in your belief? Are there principles first? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
No, I mean, there's no real, honestly, and it may be different now, but in my time as a Mormon, I don't remember one single time talking about like individual identity.
Okay.
It was, this is the plan. It's laid out in scripture. There's a prophet. He tells you what to do. There's local leaders. They tell you what to do. Here's the path to happiness. Here's the steps that you
Okay.
take. And as long as you take these steps, you'll be good. So you see a lot of people talk about Mormons like being good at business, or like the men having a lot of kids, or like being entrepreneurs. There's not a lot of ways to like have your own identity within Mormonism, because life basically is structured. You're supposed to do it a certain way. So a lot of times the only way anybody can express themselves is through like work.
Okay.
And then they oftentimes become obsessed with their work because the church isn't really giving you anything back. You're not getting much from being in the church. And so for the first time, you're like working, putting in more work than others, and you're seeing tangible results. And so you oftentimes find that people in high demand religions, they do really, really well in business and in school, or as entrepreneurs, because it's really the first time that they're getting some sort of reciprocal kickback for the work they're putting in.
Okay, that makes sense. And that was kind of one of the questions I had, is that like, are people aware that it's not really an equal trade-off, and is it a trick in their mind then when they start to see that payoff, that this was worth it? I finally got to what they promised me.
Well, I mean, imagine you worked for something your whole life until you were promised to get that reward when you were 110.
Hmm.
Most of you aren't going to ever make it to 110.
Right. Is that the
But
more
and so
success?
that's kind of what it yeah, that's kind of what it is. My friend who kind of helped me get out, that was one of the things he said is like as soon as I didn't believe it anymore, I was immediately a better husband and father because I was putting everything off. I was like, I have eternity with my family. So while I'm here on this earth, I'm going to explore these other things. It's like, so I became a better father. I became a better husband. I became a better friend. I stopped putting things off the same way that I did. I think that's a big thing for people as they exit these high demand religions. It's just like, it's hard to explain that freedom. I don't know how much you want to jump me ahead, but I remember the first time I felt free was after I was a Mormon missionary and I was driving to Arizona because I was going to play soccer. And it was like the first time I'd ever been alone in a hotel room. And I went and I bought like a 6-pack of, I'd never drank before. I bought a 6-pack of fuzzy navels. And I sat in a hotel room in Mesquite, Nevada at a casino. I went and I played blackjack. I bought these drinks and I sat in my hotel room and drank. And it was like, it wasn't a good experience, but it was so free. It was the first time I think I had ever felt like, I'm free. And I was scared. I thought like, what's going to happen when I drink this? Am I going to be an alcoholic? Like, will my life be ruined? I remember the next morning just feeling awful. But those type of moments that are just normal for everybody else, it's a big relief when you do something outside of the cult, and it's very scary.
Yeah. Um, what about when you started questioning things? Could that go either way for somebody? Like if they start questioning things, getting sucked back in through all that fear that they've brought into you, or is that the avenue in? I guess it could maybe go either way.
Yeah, the crazy thing is it's one or the other. Very few people start questioning and then stay in the church and question. Most of the time, you either leave or you become far more devout. One of the things that they always tell you is like, doubt your doubts, not your faith. And so when you start doubting your faith, but maybe the information's not enough for you to get out, maybe you weren't convinced, then you go back in and then you've got the guilt from even thinking about it, because it was a sin to even think about
Mm-hmm.
leaving. And so now you've got to go back and repent. And that pain and that shame that you feel, because everybody that stayed in is around you and they know that you left, and they might welcome you back and say like, "Hey, we're so glad you're back," but you feel that shame. And the next time you go down that road, because you're publicly shamed and because you have shame, like people are going to remind you of that. So most of the time, like somebody doesn't leave once and then come back and leave again. It's like they're out or they stay in forever.
Okay. Um, what do you think are so for those who are joining in, we're talking about high demand religions and systems and how people get sucked in. And right now we're just kind of talking about how these systems operate, sort of how they indoctrinate you. So I know you looked over kind of like my outline, and so like yourself, you were born into it. You didn't know
Hmm.
anything else.
Right.
So do you think that there's a difference between somebody like that and even on a scale, right? Because some people can be born into religion, but it's not going to be the exact same as like Mormonism, as somebody who's, just a Sunday and Wednesday, Baptist. That might not be as strict. But do you think that there is a difference in that versus somebody that didn't find it or fell into like MAGA or what red pill or whatever later in life, or do you think their indoctrination took longer? And I mean, obviously, we know that there's no perfect equation. We're just kind of chatting, but in your experience,
Yeah. So statistically, if you find it on your own, you're more likely to leave. Statistically, if
okay,
you're born into it, you're more likely to stay. And that's borne out. Like think of any country that has like a religion. You go over into the Middle East, like most people are going to be Muslim. Most
mm-hmm.
people born in Utah are going to be Mormon. Most people born in the United States are going to be Christian. But they all go out and they do missionary work. If I went back and if I still had a list of like everybody I baptized when I was a missionary, I'm going to guess that 10% at most are still Mormon. Most of them leave. It's the culture aspect of it that keeps people in. It's the community. And when you form this tight-knit community and you're doing youth night together and you're doing family nights together and you're doing church together, one of the things Mormons do really well is you have to have a call. They call it a calling, but you have an assignment in the church. All the men are required. They're assigned like a family or two families, and once a month they have to go with somebody else and visit that family, give them like a message, check on them. They help them if they have stuff. My dad had this lady that was he watched over. It's called a home teacher, his entire life. So like as long or my entire life, she was always somebody. If it snowed, we were at her house. Every last Sunday of the month, we were at her house. If it was a birthday, she would always give us a call, bring something over. If there was a birthday there, we always drop something off. And so it's the community that they build around it, and the ostracization when you leave that I think keeps people there. People are terrified. I mean, when you leave a high demand religion, you leave everything. You can't stay. You can't stay in like a normal way. You're treated different immediately. And even when people try to be nice about it, I've tried to explain this to my parents, but like now when I go back to Utah, the people that see me, it's like pity. Like they're like, oh, it's good to see you, but I sure wish you hadn't have fucked this whole thing up.
We know.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I should have smoked. Okay. That was
Still
one
time?
of the things. Say again.
There's still time. You got it.
No, I said I shouldn't have.
Oh, shouldn't have. Oh, that's never the right answer.
Okay. I think that was so. You had talked about like, do you remember as a kid? Oh no, this is what I wanted to ask. I wanted to go back to those things seem like good things, right? No, who would ever, right? Those are, there's nothing, I didn't hear anything negative when you just hear that, right? And then my assumption is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're going to paint the outside world negative along with that, where like that can't happen and it's evil, and you're safe in your community as well.
Yeah, it's a us versus them mentality, but they do it a little differently than I think. Like right now we're in a weird spot in America where it's more open, but it's not good versus evil. It's like good versus evil, but the evil people are just deceived. It's not their fault. It's our job to make sure that they know that they're deceived, and we help them find the true light. One of the remarkable things about, like I talked about my friend, but you're taught, it's ingrained in you. And there's like Mormon prophets that have talked about this. There's a famous speech called "Where Will You Go?" And it's this guy at General Conference, one of the apostles. He's saying, if you leave the Mormon church, where will you go? Mm-hmm. What will you do? And it really is like it's weirdly fear-mongering. And everybody in the Mormon church heard it, and they're like, this is beautiful. Yes, this is exactly what all my friends need to hear. Where will you go? Like, what's better than this? And it became like for people leaving the church, like it became almost like a viral thing. If you search right now, where will you go? Mormon, like if anybody has their timeline up, don't leave here. You wouldn't want to do that. But if you search that, you'll find a bunch of videos of people who have left the church, and it'll just show them like going to different places and like trying coffee for the first time, or trying a drink for the first time.
Playing on it and saying, well,
yeah,
this is what I'm doing. A million awesome things. Interesting. Okay, so how do you think people find themselves who aren't born into it? And for those of y'all who are tuning in, what we're going to eventually get to, I think, is that the goal of this is that I don't think anybody's journey from coming away from things is the same, and everybody's in a different place. And the same thing goes for us if we want to have discussions with people, is that we're also in different places. I think we all have our own wheelhouse. We have our strengths. We might, be better one day at one thing. And so I think you have to know yourself, and you have to know who you're talking to. So this isn't about getting on a live and telling information and wanting to convince people. I think that individually, I think everybody knows somebody. Um, and so what we're kind of talking about right now is like who are these people? No, I'm not ex-Mormon. I'm ex-Christian. Um, and some of this stuff overlaps, and I'll chime in if I feel necessary. But I was lucky because I had a pretty liberal atheist family, which I think played into why it was hard, why I didn't get sucked in and was able to leave, was because my base was not on that. I was a free thinker. My parents were free thinkers. They actually would ground me and take church away. So, and yes, I still have a Jesus fish on my foot. But how do you think people sort of land in these spots, and where's the overlap in religion and what we're seeing now with people who seemingly were logical and normal people, and now it's like you're talking to somebody who's quite literally brainwashed, similar to the documentary we watched about what was the about losing your dad to I lost my dad to right wing.
It's called The Brainwashing of My Dad, I think.
Oh, The Brainwashing of My
Yeah,
Dad,
there you
right?
go.
So very similar for those of y'all who haven't watched that. I highly recommend it. And where do you see that overlap with what you grew up with what's happening now? So what are some of those similarities and then maybe differences?
Well, I think one thing that's important to remember is we're all like we're all guilty of this in some ways. Like we all get stuck and wrapped up in movements and hype, and we believe things that like might not be true. I don't even remember honestly all the stories, but like I remember like Harambe, right? Or like Coney. What was that? Coney 2000 whatever. There's all these movements that often happen, and then it turns out we didn't have the real story. But people get wrapped up in that movement, and they go and they don't do their own research, or they don't do appropriate research. So I think we all get there. But what I see right now, like when I look at the current state of politics, and you can look at this worldwide, every country, specifically Western civilization type countries, white countries, are all going through the same thing. We are at times of historic peace, and they can't figure out how to like sell a message, and so they sell fear and they sell togetherness. Like JD Vance gave this speech the other night at TPUSA that to me was like so close to home. He did this like this is a big tent. We're all in this together. It doesn't matter if you're black, if you're white, if you're gay or you're straight, as long as we unify around Christ. And that's not really unifying, right? That's not saying come as you are. Mm-hmm. That's saying whoever you are, join our movement around this thing and like assimilate to this thing. And that's where I see that we're kind of the same. I think that that's what the conservative movement's struggling with right now. But the unification is around a hypothetical thing, like an imaginary thing. And it's allowed them to tell all of their followers other imaginary things. The election in 2020 was stolen. Donald Trump all this lawfare is actually proof that he's the opposite of a criminal. These vaccines really are terrible for you. It's allowed them to create a movement where almost whatever reality is, if that reality is mentioned by the other side or pushed by somebody on the other side, immediately it becomes not reality. Mm-hmm. And they're honestly pretty lazy about it. Like they're not even trying to answer these questions. They're just coming out now and saying everything from the left is evil. And I've never felt like a political movement in my life was this culty until now. Even the first Trump administration, it was different. There was some hype, there was some wait and see. Now people are viewing what he's doing and it's evil, and they're justifying the evil. And we're at a different place now.
So, and is that similar to like where you came from as far as ignoring evil? I mean, like hiding like the sexual abuse, in the Mormon church and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a good example just recently. There's a guy named Wade Christofferson. His brother is a Mormon apostle, which is like, there's 12 apostles, and they all speak to God. And so everybody views them as the greatest. And this guy named Wade, he's like 70-something years old. He's also a member of the Mormon church. And then they have another brother who's kind of famous because he's not in the church and he's gay. And so there was a story that came out that this Christofferson brother was arrested in Ohio. for sexual abuse of like a teenage girl. And the first reporting came out, everybody said like, oh, we knew, we're not surprised because he's gay. And then it came out, it wasn't the gay brother, it was the one that was in the Mormon church. But now you go back and there's 12 different cases of him of sexual abuse going back to 1985. And he got excommunicated from the Mormon church, but then they let him back in like in the 90s. And then his brother, because he was high up, expunged his record. And then he was put into more positions in a bishopric where he would oversee children. And he wound up in a position of power again to abuse kids again. And the Mormon church covered that all up. I think there's something on like Floodlight you can check out. I think there's like 300 plus open cases right now that they know of the Mormon church covering up sexual abuse, not going to authorities and trying to like keep it between their bishop and them. Which even in Utah, they changed the law where instead of a mandatory reporting, it says like you may report this stuff. If you feel like you need to report this, go ahead and report it to authorities. But if you can take care of it within the church, then take care of it. And that, yeah, somebody said that's how our government's doing similar. It's exactly what we're seeing right now with the Epstein files. And why are people okay with this? I think it boils down to one thing. Yeah, I think it boils down to if you think God is in charge of everything, if you think everything was predetermined, or at least God knew, then the fact that this is all happening to your party is just another trial that you need to get through. Another time you need to rely on your faith and say, like, you know, God works in mysterious ways. God uses imperfect tools to accomplish his goals. And so it's just a way to overlook this. All of my Mormon friends that are still Mormon, they do not care about Wade Christofferson. They don't care about the church covering it up. It just goes on their shelf and they say, this is just it's another distraction. We've got to focus. So most Mormons will be like, I'm going to put my head down, I'm going to read my scriptures, and I'm going to focus on my family, not this outside distraction stuff.
And so do you think that is, there's got to be lots of reasons why. Some people have to know that it's true, but they are fearful of leaving or getting left behind. But some people might be so ingrained that they also believe that maybe somebody can come back, or that God can forgive them, or this was part of the plan. And do you think that can you identify that in people, or does it come out? Does it appear the same?
Can you ask that differently? I'm not sure what your question is.
Like how, so like if I was going to have a conversation with somebody about the Epstein files, I would want to know if they truly believe that, so-and-so is not in them, or that he is a reformed person, and that they truly believe that it doesn't matter and it's okay, versus somebody who knows, but they couldn't certainly call it out because they have the fear of being left out,
Yeah, that's the trap. I think the fact that I think the way that you tell is if somebody says, I don't believe it. I've watched like a million debates about atheism versus Christianity. In fact, I was just watching a debate Charlie Kirk had. I don't remember the girl's name, at Cambridge, and she did an interview where she explained like how she approached that debate with Charlie Kirk. And one of the things that was like really glaring to me is that for all of them, they know that at some point in the argument, they're going to get to a point where they say, I just disagree. I don't believe that. It's against my beliefs. It happened to Charlie Kirk at one point. And in that debate, there was something he lost on, and he just said like, well, I just don't believe that. It's not part of my belief system. And they all know that. And so I think where you can see it most is in the people who have very imperfect lives, like obviously imperfect lives, and they talk about Jesus a ton. Think of Nick Fuentes. Think of Andrew Wilson. Think of the new GOP and how much they're talking about Jesus with like a group of criminals. They're constantly doing it. Ryan Walters in Oklahoma, he's constantly doing it. And then you find the stuff on his computer that isn't supposed to be there. And what does he say? This is an attack on my faith. Why does he say it's an attack on my faith? Because that brings in the other people who have the same faith. And he paints it as, hey, this isn't really about what they say it's about. It's about the faith. And if you're a devout Christian and a conservative, you go, you know what? Yeah, that actually is easier to swallow for me than to swallow like, oh, this guy who we just believed and who we held up and voted for is a bad guy. It's hard for people to admit that they were wrong, especially when it comes to beliefs. Because the way that Christians and religious people talk about their beliefs is they say, I know God's real. You know, like I know that Jesus rose again. I know that being gay is whatever it might be. They use language that they shouldn't, like they can't use. They shouldn't use. They're using it incorrectly. But they've taken the word truth and they've bastardized it into a way where truth can be something that you can verify or something that you just deeply feel.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's the easy way out. I know, like, when we first, years ago, I think the first thing I reached out to you about was when I was just sort of like fully deconstructing, but I still held on from the fear of hell, right? They ingrained the fear of hell, and it was kind of that doubt the doubt. Because I was like, well, I mean, if I'm wrong, then I might end up in hell. But it seems like it's a scapegoat or a crutch using God, right? And instead of looking inward, you can just avoid that and say, he's going to make me new and whole or whatever.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to do the work, that you just give it to him and he does it, is kind of, and then if you don't do it again, I guess you're good to go. Or how many times how many times do you get to ask for forgiveness, right? I mean,
yeah, like in a way that's kind of a beautiful thing, right? That you can fuck up and you're like, God's got it, you give it to God and then you leave it. In a way, like that's a healthy way to live your life in general. Where I think that it becomes problematic is watching the people who use it to manipulate. I don't have a problem with it in general. I think all of us kind of do that, right? Like, forgive yourself and move on. That's a difficult thing to do.
Right.
And for some people, like the vehicle to forgive themselves and move on is they give it to Jesus. They feel good. They have, they might feel what they call the Spirit, and they're really able to like remove that guilt and move on. That's a beautiful thing. Like that's one of the things about religion that I think like is helpful. I don't care if it's a made up thing. We all kind of do that, but it's the people who who get power and then manipulate. And I rarely if ever do you see somebody get immense power and remain good.
right.
Like I'm trying to think just right now, who would we say is like has power and is as good as before they got power? It almost never happens. It's a really corrupting thing. And when you're giving somebody power based on something that you can't verify, they can take you to like some fucked up places.
Yeah, it's kind of like with mega churches too. It's like the bigger churches sometimes get, the more corrupt they get, because the more power they get, the more money they get.
Well, it becomes self-sustaining, right? Like they say that you start as a small church and you're like, I'm doing God's will, and God will bless you if you do God's will. And then you're a medium-sized church and you're like, look, we've been following God's will. We were small, now we're medium-sized. And then it's like a year later, you got 20,000 people in there. It's a fucking rock concert. There's Starbucks in there. It's like it's a party all the time, and you're bringing in $5 million, and you're like, the Lord has blessed me. Look at this. But with this money, the Lord is getting. Yeah, I might have got myself a nice house, but look at this beautiful church we have, and all these people who came in here and listened to music and had a better day. So it was worth it.
Yeah.
But you could still, like that same person could still make $60,000 a year and put all that money back into the church. But it always happens that way.
Yeah, or like my pastor, he could buy 3 convertible bugs for his 3 daughters with the funds from the church.
At least you're not bitter about that. That's good. Yeah, still not thinking about that.
He was mean to us. He wasn't a nice pastor, but all right, so maybe we can shift a little bit. I think people probably want to hear maybe a little bit about you. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to skip ahead, and then we'll go back and kind of end with like how we can talk to people. But what was, I know you talked a little bit about it. What was sort of the first Well, let's back up. As a kid, were you a curious kid? Do they kill your curiosity as a child, or do they redirect it? Does personality play a role sort of in like how much you're going to get attached to the things that they're teaching you?
Yeah, I've always been. I was a curious kid, and I also had very structured, buttoned up, impersonal, impersonable parents. Like we didn't talk about our feelings. I never had to talk about sex, which if you guys have followed me for a while, you know, like that didn't go super well. It led to some weird experiences. But that curiosity, isn't viewed well. So like even though I wards are in like so in you have like congregations, you have a ward growing up, and it's just like it's a boundary, and they said like everybody within this boundary goes to the same ward every Sunday. You're in that same youth group. Um, I came from like a we had the Word Perfect, which was like Novell. It was this tech company, and we had like a lot of the programming people in our ward, and so I didn't fit in very well. But I was always a problem, and where I was a problem is that like I didn't want to sit and listen. I had questions about like stuff inside, like if I thought something was at odds with each other, I would ask those questions, and so being inquisitive, where really like the way I am and how I explore, that wasn't incentivized, and it was looked down upon, honestly. And that becomes a culture where everybody's supposed to do well in school. Everybody's supposed to have this plan. Everybody's supposed to go to college. Every woman is supposed to have a husband when they're 20, 21, start pumping out kids. They don't want that individuality. That's a threat to any of these organizations. That's a threat to MAGA. Think of any time you see a MAGA person come out with their own thoughts, it's immediately viewed as a threat, and they shut it down immediately. Yeah, I'll share a story later, but
Okay.
there's
Well, yeah,
lots of instances of that.
and the goal is the same. And when we talked about the identity earlier, is that they are telling you from a young age that you have goals. These are the things you want to do. It's kind of like a checklist, right? So what were some of the things that you remember maybe like, and the reason I'm going to point to maybe as like in a young like a young teen, if there's parents listening, or people who are having these conversations, like what were some of the things that like didn't like what were some of the things that you started questioning, that didn't make sense, or was that not a time that you did question things? Did it break off when you kind of became not the inquisitive child anymore, and now and then
Well, it was a sin, right? So no, what it actually led me to feel is like I was different than everybody else. What I've since learned is that everybody basically struggled with the same thing, where you're supposed to have this confirmation of the Spirit. It's supposed to be the most important thing. Family's the most important thing, they say, but like church is next, and it's supposed to make you feel whole. It's supposed to help you not sin, and all it ever made me do is feel like anytime I broke any of the rules, it was this massive sin. Even stuff as simple as like being at church but not paying attention, you would feel that guilt, and you learn to respond to your own guilt, and you become hyper aware of your own guilt, and your guilt winds up being what drives you. Ironically, that kills being inquisitive. That's kind of the goal. And like in the Mormon church, there was one thing they do that I think is particularly sick, and I don't know if other religions do this, but when you have like communion, we call it the sacrament. So you had people, they would bring around trays of bread first and then water, and you would take the sacrament. But you had to be worthy to take the sacrament. So you had to be keeping the rules. And you had to go in, if you broke any of the rules, you had to go in and tell your bishop. And then the bishop would say, okay, you're not worthy to take the sacrament for 6 weeks or 2 months. And you would sit there and everybody's watching you. So when those trays go around, you see who's not taking the sacrament and who is. And then you get that, like it perpetuates the problem, because then if I haven't told the bishop that I jacked off in my bedroom when I was 14 like a normal kid, if I haven't told him, I might take that sacrament because I don't want to be embarrassed. But then I have guilt because I was just unworthy to take the sacrament. Then I tell him later, and then he's like, wait, did you also take the sacrament after that happened? And it's like, yeah. Then you didn't self-report. Then the next time the sacrament comes around, everybody judges you, and you're a 15-year-old kid. You're gonna do it again.
Right.
And you're gonna repeat that guilt cycle. So I honestly believe that the thing that keeps most people in is the times when they explore. They're a little bit curious. They have a little bit of curiosity. They explore that, and then they don't find the answer, and then they feel bad, or they don't find like an out, and then that guilt just eats them up, and then they become robots.
So it's like a circle: shame, guilt,
Yeah.
shame, guilt, shame, guilt.
Called
and
the shame
it's
cycle. Yeah.
Oh, okay, the shame cycle. Yeah.
It's why in religious communities you have such like prevalent rates of people who are addicted to like adult material. It's because it's the shame that goes along with it. So you do your thing, you get your post-nut clarity, but that comes along with deep shame, religious shame. Then you hide that. Then you'll pretend that you don't do it. And so people wind up turning something that's perfectly healthy into something that they have to hide. And then you get the thrill of like, you're doing it, it's forbidden, and it just creates an up and down that's hard to break. So that's why you see that mostly far more prevalent in religious communities than non-religious communities.
So when we look at non-religious high demand systems, then where it feels like it's the same thing, but it just has a different name. Like sin. There's maybe no sin in MAGA, but it would be looked down upon to, call out another MAGA, right? Well, especially when we talk about watching people in their echo chambers just on lives and stuff like that. So what do you think are, like, what would you label those things? What are the key features that keep people from leaving non-religious sort of, I don't know what you call systems. I don't know what you would call MAGA cults, but non-religious. In my head, it feels like that might be easier to leave those because, it's not my entire community, but maybe it is for some people. Maybe their political identity did become all they have.
I can speak maybe for me, and like leaving. I wasn't in the MAGA movement. I left at that time, but for me, it's that mentality. It's that us versus them, good versus evil. And the reason that they speak in catchphrases, the reason that Republicans consistently say communist, Marxist, is because they want you to think that those words are so evil that why would you even bother studying that? Mm-hmm. Why would you bother learning what socialism is? Why would you bother learning what communism is? And on the flip side, like anytime somebody says something that's against the Republican ideals, you call it communism, you call it socialism, and it just shuts down the conversation immediately. I've never seen anybody in a debate be like, what's socialism? And they didn't know, and that they changed their mind. Or that the next time you talk to them, they're like, now I know what socialism is. I went and I read Marx, I get it now. No, they just come back with that same, like, I don't fucking care because it's so bad, I don't want to learn about it. I think the same goes with Trump. Trump has been able to take anything bad that's happened to him and say it's a witch hunt, it's phony, it's rigged. Don't even look into it. Why even look into it? It's just completely rigged. And people accept that and they move on because that's a better way for them. Nobody wants to admit that they got duped by a con man. So if they can say it's rigged and all their friends say it's rigged, then they don't have to accept it. Did you ever see Mehdi Hassan on Jubilee?
I don't think so.
All right, he debated, like, it was supposed to be like conservatives, but it was just a bunch of like white nationalists. And the first guy he had on at one point said, white Americans are Native Americans. And Mehdi Hassan's like, wait, what are you talking about? And everybody in the audience, because they're all on his side, applauded for him. And he got so proud. And like a few minutes later, he referenced that. He's like, no, I'm right. That's why the people here surrounding you applauded, because I'm right. And it was like this clear like moment of, holy shit, he doesn't know why he thinks that. He knows it's stupid, but it was enough for him that the people around him applauded, that he got way more confident. And everybody else that came up thereafter, they couldn't explain why they said that white Americans were the true Native Americans, but they all clapped. So because it was 20v1, they all decided they were right and Mehdi Hassan was wrong.
So I think that kind of brings me to like what this live can be about and what these conversations are about, is that it's it's hard to talk to people in groups. You cannot. It's so hard to go into those MAGA lives as the blue dot, right? Because they just mute you, overtalk you, and say you're lying. And so it does sound like when you can talk to somebody individually, get them into, find out who, because we can easily, when MAGA gets together, MAGA's MAGA, right? When a cult gets together, the cult is the cult. But we are individuals, and individually, we all are struggling with our own things. And so that's why I think it's important to kind of talk about like who these people are. And then I had sort of compared it to like my debate with Pearl, that I didn't study her at all. And I didn't, I went in sort of like with my strengths, which isn't a bad thing, but she was never going to receive those facts. And so kind of figuring out it's not a manipulation tactic, but just going in and meeting somebody where they are. And then being that place for them to come back and sort of like check in, like a litmus test. And I do think that there are people who do that. I have a friend who should have certainly blocked me a long time ago on Instagram, for as much as she tells me that I think I know everything and that, but she still will randomly message me every once in a while and say things like, well, I asked because I respect you. So I know people need what you've talked about, like that soft landing spot, right? And it doesn't mean that they're coming back to get affirmation that I'm not a bad person, but it's like they're checking, it's like toddlers, like looking back to their parent and being like, is this, and you had sort of mentioned, that, and I think that goes hand in hand. It's without the Mormon church, where will you go? That is scary. But if people have a place to go, it wouldn't be as scary. Do you agree with that? Is that?
Yeah, I think that you depending on where you're having the conversation, right? So let's use your example with Pearl. If you would have studied Pearl a little bit more, if you would have been more ready for that debate, it probably would have went better, but Pearl wouldn't have changed her mind. You never were going to get her to change her mind on anything. But you weren't speaking to Pearl. You were speaking to anybody else who's listening there. There may be somebody that sits in the audience and listens. I think you actually originally said like meeting people where they are. And I do think that there is, I don't know how to, this is a hard way to explain. Not a hard way to explain, a hard thing to navigate. When I first started debating, I wouldn't touch certain topics. I wouldn't touch abortion. I wouldn't touch topics of racism. And I used to say, like, it's just not my place. I have no experience with it. I'm not going to have that discussion. I need somebody else to represent them. But then if you just look at that logically, let's just say that anybody that's here, let's say you have a friend that's not political, but your friend's kind of racist. Your friend makes some racist jokes. If it was on a live or if it was public, it's one thing. Like it's hard to get away from that. But if your friend makes racist jokes, instead of just abandoning them or chastising them, perhaps you make them feel uncomfortable about it. Perhaps you don't laugh. There's ways to meet people where they're at, and I do think that canceling people, and not to be like, you can see it in the chat. People say like there's no hope for MAGA. There's no hope for anybody. We shouldn't platform people. That's never worked. Not like Nick Fuentes is the biggest person on the right. Why? He got deplatformed. It was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because then people, exactly, then he gets to be one. Then he gets to be a victim. Then he gets to say, like, I say such important things that they cancel me. And people that are listening say that too. The point is, like, if you're somewhere where you feel like you're not getting through to somebody, you can leave. But this idea that we have to cancel people and that everybody in MAGA is irredeemable,
Oh, crap.
I think that's silly.
Oh, wait. Hold on.
Just have to do the puzzle piece.
Where is it? I don't see it.
It's usually just on the screen.
Oh, okay. It's just taking a long time. Panic. I'm panicking, guys. Panic. Don't panic. Everything's okay. I got it, guys. Everything's great. There's a delay on my... Okay, hold on. I'm almost there. I'm really good at puzzles. It's actually one of my other superpowers besides collecting men's tears and parallel parking. Okay, I think I got it.
Like I would look at the people that have caused change in this country. They went into places that there were gross people. They stood with people that they didn't necessarily always align with. They found ways to find common ground. It does work. I don't know I don't know how much it works, but I do know that at least for me, I would rather be the person who went through my life believing that everybody can like turn it around than be the person who gives up. And I do think that a lot of the problem that we have, including with MAGA, is that we give up on people. We're very quick to cancel people, and especially with an app like TikTok, it's really easy to pile on. We're gonna bring out the worst behavior in everybody. My worst days is like a person have been on TikTok. I think the most you get angry, you get frustrated, you get cornered. We do that to people, and then we're surprised when people lash out or do something that exposes maybe like their own biases. But I do wish that we could get to a little bit different place where we could have the debates, but allow people to come back, allow people to leave, think about it, and come back and continue that debate.
I think we can. I think sometimes TikTok's like a false reality, which is kind of why I'm not really speaking to TikTok's. It is what it is. I don't, sometimes you don't even know who you're really talking to. And so while these conversations are important, kind of what you said, if you're not getting through to the people, on TikTok or in these conversations, but you have an audience, there's people listening. But I think that, what you do every day is important, and what I do every day is important. But I also think that individually we can do a lot. And if everybody was the one place one person could come to check in with consistently, they might keep coming back and coming back and coming back, and then eventually go, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And you don't have to excuse that behavior. You can, still call them a dumb bitch, maybe even, right?
I would never.
Well, so that's the other question is that, we hear you talk about a soft landing all the time, but you also call people dumb bitches. So where is, right? I mean, because the truth is that these are hard truths. And I think sometimes people are being name call worthy. And that can be hard. And I don't think that we have to always protect, or destroy ourselves or censor ourselves for their benefit to make them comfortable. So for people listening, I absolutely think people can sit out. I don't know that this is even the job for everybody. Or maybe it just isn't today. Or maybe you already did something and you need a break. Why are you smiling like that?
I'm just sorry. I'm just thinking. Sorry. My bad.
So I know, and I'm not reading the comments too much, because I think it's fair. I think it's fair for people to say, I'm going to wash my hands and this isn't for me. I think that that's okay. But I think that there's enough of us. And I think the biggest thing for me is most of us know at least one person that they can have a conversation with or be that. But
I think you probably know more than you think. To respond to like the name calling, I can tell you what I try and do with name, and this isn't always the case, but I think if you watched any debate I've done with somebody that I really, really don't like, I almost never call them names because it's not going to help. Mm-hmm. It's going to give them an opportunity to be a victim. Ironically enough, like if you go through and like the people that I normally call, like Tex, I call Tex a dumb bitch. I might call like Hoodie a dumb bitch. I might call Admir those are the people that DM me. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that come around. I think there was a time when honestly I think Jen and I were maybe Tex's only friends in the world. During all that time when he was awful in the comments, and he was awful offline too, but when he had his child, he told me and Jen. Like when he wanted advice on like how to be a parent, he did come to me. And so like I do think that if you are that person, and if you're like if you're gonna be on a different side politically, if you still can be that person who can hold your ground and say like, nah, like I'm not cool with your racism or whatever, but I'll still like, I'll be here on these terms. I do think that people naturally are drawn to that.
Yeah.
And I actually think with Tex has been a weird one. Like it was tough. Like he would go so back and forth. It would be, you saw it with Jeff, you see it with Abmir too. Not to call them, but they see like they'll get close and then they get pushed away and they get close and they get pushed away. But I think they see authenticity. If you can give somebody an authentic discussion, if you can give somebody an authentic view, if you can explain like what these harms are, the truth is, I don't think anybody gives a fuck if they're called racist. I get called racist every day by Republicans. It doesn't affect me. What would affect me is like if I understood and it has happened. The couple, like when Charlie Kirk died, I wasn't sensitive to other people who had been harmed by him. And like sometimes being aware of how you hurt somebody without just being called a racist, like you can have those conversations offline or sometimes in the moment. But I do think that you can do both. I don't know, like
No,
you say shit to me
agree.
all the time. My friends that I'm close with, like that's how we talk. So I think you can kind of do both. But if you hold your standard, and whatever your standard is, if you set that standard, you can occupy places with people who have terrible standards, and you can be the example. Look, I can have a conversation. I can hold my ground. I can have my standards. I can allow somebody else to have their standards, and I can still defend my beliefs, and I can still speak up for people who, maybe on that panel or in that discussion don't have a voice, whoever it might be.
How many times do you think you went? You said your cousin was kind of who you talked to mostly as you were figuring things out. Is that right?
No, it was my friend. I think it's a different story. I think I told you about. I had
Sorry.
a cousin. No, I had a cousin who allowed me to be a dog shit Republican to her forever. We would argue like back when I had Facebook years ago when I was working for the GOP. And we would argue back and forth on Facebook, and she kind of got rid of everybody in our family. And then we didn't talk for a long time, but when we reconnected, I just told her, I was like, that actually meant a lot to me, and it's part of the reason why I was open-minded to have new views like years down the road.
Okay.
Because she never quit on me. She just kept having those conversations, and I was like, why did you do that? And she said, because I knew that you were trying. Like, I thought you were wrong. I hated your opinions. But like, I saw that you were reading things, you were checking sources. When I sent you stuff, you read it. And even though you came back with a different conclusion, I always knew that you would try. So she just never really gave up.
That's kind of it right there. And so your friend then, you had a friend that you sort of went to a lot.
He called me one night. He was the most Mormon of all my friends. And even though I was Mormon, everybody at that point, my closest friends, they knew that I drank. They knew that I don't think I smoked at the time, but they knew I didn't go to church. And like drinking, that's a big deal. Like that's a big, big deal. And he was still my friend, but he called me one night and he was like, hey, do you still believe in the church? And I thought this was like this olive branch from him. And I was like, yeah, probably when I have a kid, I'll go back to church. And he's like, I don't. I was like, what? He's like, I don't believe in it. And we talked for like 3 hours. He started giving me information about the stuff that he had believed.
Can I ask?
Oh, go ahead.
Did anybody else know this about him yet?
I was one of the first people he called. A handful of people knew. It was a while before he left the church. His dad's a prominent Mormon. His dad was a professional athlete, which there's not a lot of Mormon professional athletes, so they are seen as kind of like royalty where I grew up. And so he was pretty quiet about it for a long time. Okay. But he just opened that door. And again, I just think he saw that I was somebody who would change my mind, have different discussions. I think he had seen me at that point kind of move away from MAGA. And that little bit of permission that he gave me to doubt my faith, weirdly enough, like I don't think people who are still Mormon would understand it, but it changed my life forever. Because that was the first time anybody really gave me permission that I loved and said, you can go down this road, like I'm still here. Mm-hmm. And then that's when I started going to therapy. I didn't know anything about deconstruction. I hadn't deconstructed any of my shit at that point. I was still just an asshole. I was racist. I just kind of fucking hated Donald Trump. And then that's when I started like saying, like, oh, I should just rethink everything I think. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I still try and do that as much as I can. Just constantly, like, do I believe that? Is that real? Can I still back that up?
Yeah, and trying to convince MAGA to go to therapy, oof, might be tough. Especially if we talk about the red pill and masculinity. I think I had sort of tapped into this, and we don't have to go into it, but do you think for men and women coming out of this, I feel like we hear in all of these systems we can talk about masculinity, leader, power, strong, the hierarchy. They seem to all sort of be the same, and they're meant, all these systems, and we talked about this when Artie and I were live with Facts, is that all of these are rooted in the ability to like gain labor and what you want out of people, and to maintain control and power. And so with that, you have.
Can I correct, maybe change that a little bit?
Yeah.
I don't think they're designed to do that. I think they become that.
Okay.
I find that most people who start a religion, or most people that start a church, or most of these movements, and when you research them, they start with really, really good ideas and values. It's the corruption of power and giving somebody that much power. I don't know that there are human beings that can deal with that kind of power and not be corrupted. I think that, and that's what's hard for people to admit, because the founding story of your church is so crucial and so important. You have to believe those founding principles or those founding events in order for you to maintain that faith. So that creates then a structure where whoever started your church then has to be perfect. I think that like you could compare somebody like L. Ron Hubbard and how he's held as a deity, despite the fact that he was just like a failed writer. He was a dirtbag. He was super manipulative, and he created Scientology. You can look the same like with the Trump movement. They aren't. You can't now start questioning him, because if you question one thing, the whole thing unravels, and they build lie on lie on lie on lie and lie till you believe 8,000 lies, and they're crucial. So deciding that one of those things is a lie is a problem. You've seen it. How many people do you ever see say, you know what, Donald Trump's a fucking liar, he lied about this, or Donald Trump's a criminal, and then they stay MAGA? Almost never. Why? Because like it's because they've built this whole movement on a bunch of lies.
My mom and I were talking about that last night. She said the exact same thing. She said she thinks the reason our people are really struggling or at this point is because if they're so far in it. She said exactly what you said, that if they admit this, then you have to work backwards from that. Because if you pull the thread, like Green Day said, what, my sweater come undone. If you pull the string, your sweater is just gonna completely unravel. Because they're all, you work backwards. It's a snowball effect. You tell one lie, you lie. Is it Weezer? Oh, no, it's not Weezer. It's Weezer, whatever. I didn't get it.
I think Weezer is the sweater song. Yeah.
Damn, it is Weezer. Yeah. Okay, fine. Fuck. All right.
I think it's called the sweater song.
All right, we're ending the live. We're done on that now. But yeah, and she said the exact same thing, that it is because, and then I think that you would have to be ready to be done if you're willing to do that, and then it's that back and forth too, right? So if you are willing to admit it, how far back are you willing to go? Because if you stop, you're just gonna get sucked right back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. Let me read through some of the stuff that I had. We kind of hit most of these questions. Well, you kind of answered this. I was thinking about this question, and I found it interesting. What was more important to you? That you were challenged hardcore by them, or that they stayed connected while you were figuring things out? And you sort of answered that like just having that place and giving a permission.
Yeah, but I didn't know that at the time. And this is probably kind of, I have a combative, like argumentative personality. Like at the time, I wouldn't have said that. At the time, I would have said what was most important is that people challenged me hardcore. But looking back, that was to solidify my argument. I wanted to hear the best argument against it, so I had the right answers. in hindsight, somebody staying around, even when they hit a wall, was the most important thing.
So do you think that somebody can be both of those things? Or I mean, again, it's not an equation that you can figure out, but it seems like, I mean, do you think when people are leaving and they come to you, so if somebody were to come to you, do they do want to be challenged, and possibly have a place to come back to be challenged or ask questions?
Yeah, I think what's important is that you leave the door open, but it is important to be firm where you're at. Um, I say the same thing here. Like we've had this, I've kind of changed my views on like how we choose to platform and deplatform people. Now my views are I'm going to deplatform. Like I'm not going to platform somebody if it's obvious that what they're doing is trolling. Not if they're stubborn. If they come back with the same ideas the next time, that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. But like if somebody is still actually out there battling and they're not just trying to push buttons, I don't know. I don't want to look back and say, I don't want to look back at any point in my life and say, like, I could have helped somebody here. I could have swayed somebody to do something right here. I could have been more open-minded here. Those are the type of regrets that I fear now, is that looking back, I'll be like, you know what? I let my own ego get in the way of compassion. And one of the places where I think conservatives are like more open about something that we're not is when they talk about empathy being a weakness. They say it, but like we do it too. We just don't say it. Right?
What do you mean that like?
Let's ask the chat. How many people in this chat have empathy for MAGA?
Oh, okay, got it. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
We don't. And it's because of our experience and this idea that like nothing will ever change. And if we feel that way, we're going to act that way. And are we going to get that change? Probably not. Empathy is fucking hard. It's so fucking hard to have empathy for people that you don't like. It is so hard.
Well, I think that's why I'm trying to like come at this. Like obviously, I don't have to have the same type of empathy maybe when I'm giving information and hoping that people are listening, as when we all have. Everybody has somebody that they could talk to. I don't believe that people don't have empathy. I mean, maybe some people don't, but you have empathy for the people in your life that you love, that you lost to MAGA, and that you would want to see them come back. And so I guess like I'm coming from a place where I don't know that everybody should have empathy for MAGA collectively. I think if you're going to take the role of maybe a content creator, you have to be able to speak with empathy and be able to talk to those people. And I don't think everybody's meant to do that. But empathy is a personal thing, right? So like you wouldn't have empathy for a collective. Like empathy requires you to get into their shoes, to see things from their perspective, even if it's a perspective that you disagree with. Like your ability to see things from their perspective is key. And I think that's a hard thing to do. And I do think that I have the benefit of being from that perspective. So it's a hell of a lot easier for me because I remember what it was like. I have friends and family that have that perspective. So it's probably, I mean, I also have the goodwill of being a white man born in America, where like it's a lot. I think it's just a lot easier to have empathy. I'm not saying that everybody needs to, but when is empathy a bad thing? Yeah, and I think again, I'm kind of speaking more on that personal level too, right? Like I can understand that platforming somebody who says really harmful things to your audience can be something bad that you could choose to not do or whatnot, right? But like in our personal lives, I agree, right? If you have the opportunity to have a conversation and you have that capacity and we really truly want to see change, I think, I don't want to say we owe it, but I want it. And if we can figure out how to have these conversations, and it isn't I'm not saying have an 8-hour conversation and try to convince somebody in 8 hours. It might be these small things that I'm hoping people will recognize and go, oh, you know, that one guy at work, maybe that's why when he asked me that.
Well, empathy isn't forgiveness for their views. It's not forgiveness for their actions. Empathy is the ability to see things from their perspective. You can have empathy for somebody and still think that what they're doing is harmful. You can still take steps to reduce that harm. Like you said, like if somebody is harmful and you don't want to platform them, don't platform them. If you have that empathy and you understand their perspective and you think you can have a discussion one-on-one, have that discussion. If you don't platform somebody and don't have a discussion with them and you don't talk to them at all, still trying to gather empathy to try and understand that perspective, it still is a worthwhile endeavor. And I do think a lot of times, like, we just stop trying to figure out where people are coming from. It doesn't mean that you have to be their friend. Doesn't mean you have to even talk to them. But if you can do that work and try and understand their perspective, there may be somebody else that you help. But I think even just for me, it makes it a lot easier to deal with MAGA. I try and picture them all as my mom. Like, my mom is sweet. My mom's born and raised in a cult. My mom has done nothing but have men with a title tell her what to think, what to do, what advice, like how to live her life. That's all she's ever known her entire life. So am I surprised when she sees Mike Pence and Donald Trump and goes, I'm going to listen to them? They're talking about Jesus. I love Jesus. No, I'm not surprised at all. I understand her perspective. She supports things that do real harm to real people. But like, if I just call her and yell at her and say,
Right.
like, you're supporting harm, she's going to tune out. So every time I do talk to her about something like that, I try and find some way to find something that I know she cares about and just and tie it. Like, are you supportive of this? She's starting to come around on some things. Not everybody comes around, but just like internally for ourselves, I think it's a really important skill to say, like, can I figure out where this person's coming from? Can I understand? Can I figure out a way to put myself in that perspective to how they came to those views? And if you can do that, and if a lot of people can do that, I think the world just naturally becomes a better place.
Yeah, I think that's kind of just it. Like, if you can, you might be able to one day, and maybe the next day you can't. You know, I don't think that it's like I said, it's not an equation. I don't think everybody has the capacity same days, and I don't, and there's some people I don't think who owe any of that, who've been harmed in the United States. I think especially as like a white person. When you said you talk about your mom, it made me think that, do you feel a sense of responsibility to talk to men who maybe are the reason why your mother, is in that role, right? Like, she's kind of a victim. And so, like, helping men deconstruct helps the women who are born into it or choose, safety by proximity to these systems.
No, honestly, no. Like, I can't. Nothing I would say to my dad would get through. For me, what I try and do is I try and give them an alternative. Right? Like, I try and give them that perspective there that, like, I'll listen to you. I'm understanding of where you're coming from. Again, drawing that hard boundary of, like, here's my line. I don't like sugarcoat it when I talk to my mom about my perception of the church and the harm that they've done to me, and my fear that if my daughter was a member of the Mormon church, like, the damage that it would do to her. I'm clear when I say I think it's done damage to you. I think it's done damage to your ability to have relationships, the way that you view men versus women. But yeah, I don't think going after the men, like, I don't think that solves the problem. It almost like, it's like, oh, a man solved your problem. I'm here, another man. Let me go solve your problem. We'll just facilitate this. I want her to understand what's happening to her, and she makes those decisions. And again, she might still make those decisions with that understanding to stay in the church, but she's in a better place. She's in a healthier place. She's making her own decisions. So I don't know. I love to debate. I love to talk about ideas, and I think that that's a blessing and a curse. So I can sit with some shitty people and do that. And I want to point out one other thing. Like, empathy is yours. A lot of people have said, like, we can't expect other people to have empathy. You shouldn't expect anybody to have empathy. It's yours. Only you can feel empathy. You can't make somebody else feel what you're feeling. That's a very personal thing. So when we talk about empathy, it's on a level of, like, it's not a group thing. We can't say, like, we as the left need to have more empathy. No, like, I need to have more empathy. And I know, like, only I, through my experience, can have that empathy. You and I could have empathy for the same person and be completely different because it's your experience versus my experience. I can only connect that way. But the desire to find that, the desire to figure out, like, where somebody's perspective comes from. And you know this. I don't know how much you talk about it, but you know that some people that you've cared about have not been good people. But you also can acknowledge, or you've just, like, figured out, like, I know where that pain comes from. I know where this lashing out comes from. Could be, childhood trauma. Could be religious trauma. Could be racial trauma, right? So you can still take somebody whose actions you think are abhorrent and say, like, but I do know where this comes from. I think that's powerful. If you can look at somebody who is angry and lashing out, and you can at the very least say, like, that comes from something. That's still a human. That's not like scum. It's still a human life. They got here somehow. How do can we unpack that? Let's figure out how they got to where they're at.
Yeah.
At the very least, you have better discussions.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why, I wanted to talk about what it's like for kids, and how this indoctrination works, and things like that. What do you think, if you could give, some advice, or, like, when can you identify maybe when somebody is wanting you to sort of poke them, challenge them, right? Like, but they're maybe they know they're opening the door for you to come through.
I think if you're waiting for that, it's too late. Like, I think if you're waiting for that, like, it's almost never going to happen. And if they're at that stage, like, it's going to be a really easy conversation. If somebody's coming to you, like, and they already have doubts, then it's an easier conversation. I think the more telling something, like, I use text again, but, like, he messages me. He will message me.
Okay.
He wants attention. If you message somebody, no matter how you message somebody, you message them because you want attention. You might want attention because you're, like, chewing them out. You might want, no matter how you message somebody, if you're going out of your way to message somebody, they want attention. And think about it, like, why did they message me? They somehow, for some reason, they value the attention I'm giving them. So then what can you do with that? Then it's your choice what you do with that attention. And I have just found that with the people that I've worked with on the other side of the aisle, if I draw my own strong boundaries and say, like, this is what I believe in, and I push back, but I do it in a way where they think that it's me, like, trying to help them understand a different perspective, I find they just keep coming back.
Do people tell you that you sound arrogant when you talk to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably because I'm arrogant, though. I think they're probably right about that.
I was just wondering. Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, my conversations offline are going to be different than they are in a debate stage. Like, I really do I'll ask a lot more, like, personal probing questions about where their beliefs come from. And I think most people want to tell their story. They're afraid maybe to do it publicly, but most people want to tell you their story. So it's
I think you're
single time.
Great at it. I think, like, that's one thing I struggle with, and that I've started doing better, is letting people tell me more things, and, like, asking questions and sort of letting them. I tend to give a lot of information, and sometimes that's really, like, threatening and overloading to people too. So would you maybe agree that, like, if that door is open, don't, like, get horny and just start dry humping right away, like, slow roll in there?
Do we change topics? I have not dry humping text, just to be clear. Yeah, I do think that. Yeah, so listening is important. It's the most, always in any relationship, your ability to actively listen is important. And active listening, the more you do it, the more you understand how the person thinks and views things. I think my advice would just be, like, don't give advice. just ask a bunch of questions. A lot of times you can just keep asking somebody questions about why they believe something, and they run out of like reasons. And if it's one-on-one and they don't feel like you're going to go post their DMs, a lot of times they'll just be like, yeah, I don't really know. It's just what I've always believed. But asking questions and actually listening to comprehend, yeah, I think that's important. People are simple. Like, they just want to be part of a group. I hate to keep going back, but like, the reason Nick Fuentes is popular is because there's a bunch of angry men or young men. And a lot of them like the idea that he tells them that they're perfect just the way that they are. And that's what religion does. That's what these groups that like try and get control, that they do. They say, come as you are, but now we're going to unify around this thing. And so you have a bunch of people who, either haven't amounted to much or haven't had the success that they're looking for, and they're showing up and they're saying, it's not you, you're not the problem, you're fine how you are. Like, why do we have to accept others when people won't accept you? And that's how you wound up with this movement, like this hateful movement, is you just have a bunch of people who want to hear that they're fine. And so I think that's important.
It seems too, with everything that's, if they continue to divide and separate through media and like discourse and what Donald Trump is doing too, they kind of further that idea that you need to band together with your community even more now because everybody else is the enemy.
They're all saying it, right?
Right.
It's fake news. The media is fake news. This is they're all saying like it's not even like a right versus left. It's good versus evil. You could go back and you could look at. I'll use this because fuck this guy. But like behind the scenes, what Mr. Jones was doing when he was on this app, he did it in a very similar way. He started controlling like who you could talk to and who you couldn't. I'll be like T, for example. I've never spoken to T in my life. I don't think we've ever. Maybe we have. But he was somebody early on. Jones was like, "Don't talk to this guy." Then I found out he has beef with Jones. And then like there were certain creators that that we weren't allowed to bring on. They were every once in a while something would happen on his live and he'd text me, be like, "Hey, don't bring this guy up. He's a problem." And a lot of us just did it, like most of us did. Any of these other creators, we all did it. Parker did it. Like we all did this thing, and it's because we believed in what he was doing. We trusted him. We trusted his judgment. He became like this thought leader, and he just slowly turned people against each other and created this like environment for himself. People will use your political beliefs to try and control you. That's not a right or left thing. That's what people use, beliefs. They use your willingness to take an expert and follow that expert, and they will manipulate, and they will try and get you to join their movement, and then suddenly it's like, well, we don't really know why we're doing this, but we're doing this.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the binary is such a weird place too. They've done a good job with that. Is creating like the either or when nothing in life is really like that. Nothing is really black and white. I mean, maybe some things. But let's see here. I think we kind of hit all of the time. Do you think I missed anything? Or I know we didn't really like. I made an outline just in case because I was panicking. But I knew that it would just flow relatively well. But I know we wanted to maybe bring some people up as well. But do you want to maybe give like a closing kind of statement on like if people are searching for a way to talk to somebody that they love, or even if they're here questioning their own, and this doesn't again, like you mentioned, right, this doesn't have to be a religion or MAGA. This could be the red pill stuff that we talked about. This could be anything that you're struggling with and that you're finding yourself not understanding why you've gotten sucked in somewhere. So maybe there's a mother out there wanting to talk to their son or a friend. What would you say, or what's the one thing that they could maybe take away from this?
Yeah, I would say the opposite of what I learned in church when they say doubt your doubts, not your faith. Doubt your faith. Doubt your beliefs. Doubt your politicians. Doubt your party. doubt your belief in socialism, capitalism, communism, whatever it is, whatever beliefs you have, the things that you can't prove, doubt them often. Don't hold to them. Be willing to abandon what you believe at any like at a moment's notice. If that's who you are, like you'll find the right answers. And maybe some of you won't ever change your beliefs. That's a great thing. But you should always be willing to accept, especially when it comes to politics and religion, that the leaders, the values, the program, the organization, that they can be evil, or that they can be wrong, or that they could be leading you in the wrong direction. Just always question it, and then help other people to do the same thing. There's right answers out there. There's like I harp on it nonstop, but like single payer is healthcare is so obviously the only solution to fix this problem, and the only reason we can't is because a bunch of people ideologically are against it. Like nobody can even figure out an argument. Democrats and Republicans are both scrambling. Like, what if we throw more money at it? And they're like, well, if you throw money at it, it'll get worse. So let's do nothing. Those are our two options. And it's because there's a lot of people who don't want to just say like, we've all been wrong. We've all fucked this up. Yeah. Obama was wrong. Obamacare was wrong. It doesn't matter. Be willing to abandon something you believed and move on.
I think that's good.
It's Blue Cranny. I have 3 ex-husbands. That's right. She always doubted everybody. That's beauty.
Okay. I appreciate you. I thought that was fun.
Thank you.
Do we want to bring up any guests to just chit chat? Not chit chat. Let me rephrase that. We don't want to chit chat. Do we want to open for some Q&A? Maybe just a couple minutes to ask Jay some questions.
Are you asking me, or are you asking
anybody
the chat?
Anybody who will answer. Let me look and see if there's anybody.
I'm fine. I've probably got another. What time is it? I probably have another 30-ish minutes, maybe a little more.
I know my daughter asked to spend the night, but she always calls me and says she doesn't want to spend the night, but she hasn't messaged.
Are you going to save this? A lot of people are asking if they can watch it again. Did you stream it on YouTube?
Yes, I did not stream it, but I will put this on my YouTube, and I can give it to Jen to put on your YouTube if you want.
It's the right way to do that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to Jen. Okay. There's somebody in the guest request named Donald Trump, though. I don't know if that's... no debates.
No, that's friendly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm a friendly.
Hi, friendly.
For some reason I can't hear myself. Oh, there we go. I had 2 quick questions for RTP, if that's cool, for Jay. What was... you might have said this earlier, but I missed about 15 minutes, so hopefully what was the final straw that caused you to, question, or made you starting to question your faith with that religion?
It was permission from my friend, who was the most Mormon of us. He doubted his faith first. I wish I was more courageous and said I did it on my own. And some people are like that, but for me, it really was permission from somebody who I thought was better at the church than me, saying I doubt it. And then from there, with Mormonism, the big killer for me, there were 2, and it was basically, I read a book about Brigham Young, and all the shit that he did, and I was like, all right, this guy fucking sucked. This guy was a bad person, and it was just lie after lie after lie, tons of stuff we never learned that's verifiable. They murdered people, they put hits on people. He was marrying child brides. He was giving child brides to other people. But all that stuff was kind of hidden to us, or from us. But it really was just my friends calling me and saying, I don't believe it anymore.
Yeah. And my second question, real quick, sorry. So I know you used to work with, I think it was Romney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If there was never a Trump, do you think right now you would still be Republican, or was Trump the catalyst that made you question more?
He definitely was. I don't know. I want to say no. I want to say I would still be over here. I don't know.
Because I feel like your views are more progressive.
Far more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My views have all changed, but I probably would have, because exiting the church, like, I had to unpack a lot of misogyny and a lot of racism and patriarchy shit. So yeah, I think I would have got here, but in a different way, probably.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Dang it, I was muted. Somebody in the chat mentioned that you had a daughter, so maybe when your daughter was born, that may have been a catalyst as well, if perhaps.
I don't know. It wasn't when she was born, honestly. It was when I started to like parent. That's evolved a lot of my views, or at least like it's made them. I don't know if my views changed, but they've become more crystallized. Like having a daughter in this world, and feeling like I need to make it a better place for her. And I don't know. There's a lot of that guilt from like how I lived and how I treated women for like 30 years of my life, as like, your job is to cook and clean and be an oven. So there's a lot of that. I feel like I'm making up for lost time.
Just teach her about arsenic, how to put it in a sandwich.
Yeah, I think she's gonna figure that out.
Just kidding. Nobody else is in the guest request. So
Sweet.
Yeah. So I appreciate you, y'all. I appreciate you all for hanging out. I'm trying to do just a couple different topics on my live, and so we've got some other ones coming up. So if you guys have any other discussions that you want me to lead, I'd be happy to do that. I think that was it. Anything you want to say?
No, thanks. I think I love what you're doing. Keep doing this.
Yeah, I appreciate you. All right, you guys. I guess we're signing off, and I'll see y'all Monday. I think Jay's probably going live Monday as well. So y'all have a good night, and we'll see you around next time. Bye.